Welcome to the Haunted Beard, everybody. My name is Jake. Thank you for joining me. Today, I want to give you my thoughts and review for Wolfman. This is, of course, the film directed by Leigh Whannell, and it stars Julia Garner and Christopher Abbott. This film tells the story of a family at a remote farmhouse who is attacked by an unseen animal. But as the night stretches on, the father begins to turn into something unrecognizable. And of course, it is the Wolfman. And I'll start off getting into the positives. I think the aspect of this film that worked the best for me is the sort of father-daughter, father-son type of relationships that are established throughout the film. I thought the film did a pretty good job making that relationship impactful to where you really felt the emotions behind it and the dramatic weight. The film opens up, and the opening scene occurs 30 years prior to the events of the film. We see Christopher Abbott's character as a kid out in the woods hunting with his father, and that's where they have the first encounter with the Wolfman creature. And his father is a very kind of harsh, stern man who comes across a little hostile and just kind of mean. And there is this dynamic there that's established between father and son that has kind of caused a little bit of father wounds, I think, in Abbott's character's life as he enters into adulthood, and have clearly affected him in terms of how he wants to father his child. And this really plays a pretty significant part of the rest of the film, as Blake, which is Abbott's character's name, He doesn't want to be his father. He doesn't want to turn into his father. He wants to do things a different way when it comes to parenting and raising his daughter, Ginger. And I think this aspect may connect with me more personally than it might do with a lot of other people. Just being a father myself and having a daughter, I can't help but just kind of take to those sort of relationships in movies. That father-daughter dynamic, it kind of just hits me in a soft spot in my heart. And so I couldn't help but just kind of connect to that and kind of seeing and understanding his perspective in wanting to be a good father, right? And wanting to raise your daughter to where she feels safe and secure and she can grow and be strong and thrive and things like that. And so I think the film does a pretty good job with that type of relationship there. As I mentioned, talking about the opening scene, I think that is perhaps the best scene in the film. And so I think the film does a good job with its opening. And to me personally, it was the scene in the film that I felt was the scariest, that I felt was, it caused me to be most kind of on edge and feeling just those intense, suspenseful, tension-filled type of feelings. I really liked the opening scene. I thought it did a really solid job kind of establishing the mood and really the tone of the film. And I also enjoyed, for the most part, the practical effects. I think the film does a pretty good job with the practical effects. I'm sure there's a little bit of mixture of CG in there as well, but for the most part, I was pretty satisfied with it. You do get some pretty good kind of, body horror type stuff. And so just as somebody who likes that kind of horror, I think there's something here that you'll at least get something out of it, that you'll at least enjoy. At least I did myself. And so that was another one of the highlights for me. And so while I do think there are some positives in the film, overall though, I was a little bit underwhelmed and a little bit disappointed, if I'm being honest. And I think that largely has to do with just the overall story. This is, I think, kind of an underdeveloped story that really kind of left me wanting more. And when all is said and done, really what you have here is a very small movie that's very small in scope. You've really only got a few major characters, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the story is also small. And like I said, underdeveloped. I mean, this is really just a film where a guy turns into a wolf and attacks his family, and the end. That's really all there is to it. So what you have here is Christopher Abbott, Julia Garner, they're a married couple, they have a daughter, and their marriage is a little bit rocky. They've kind of hit a little bit of a rough patch, and Abbott just found out that his father has now been declared legally deceased. So he decides that it's going to be a little bit of a family getaway. They're going to fly from, I believe, New York, where they are, out to Oregon to go to his father's house to collect his belongings and bring them back. And he thinks it'll be just kind of a good opportunity for them to maybe, get away from the crazy city life and kind of reconnect. and they're trying to find his father's cabin, which he hasn't been to in years. It's in some very vast, remote area of the Oregon wilderness, and they're driving the U-Haul truck basically out there trying to find it. They get a little bit lost. They end up picking up this guy who claims to know Christopher Abbott from when he was a kid. This is a pretty good scene in the film. Kind of gives you that sort of, stranger danger sort of vibes. You don't know if you can trust this guy. Does he have ulterior motives? They end up getting into this truck crash, which if you've seen the trailer, you've probably seen bits and pieces of. Another pretty good sequence. And this is the scene that starts Abbott's transformation. He ends up getting scraped and cut by the wolf that is there during this truck crash. And so by the time everything kind of unfolds and goes down, we're about 40 minutes into the movie when he starts showing his first signs of transformation. And it's a very slow, gradual transformation that isn't complete until like an hour 15, an hour 20 minutes into the movie. And the movie's only an hour 35, maybe an hour 40 tops. And so it's like you have the vast majority of the film is just him slowly transforming into this wolf. And that's really all there is. They find the cabin, they're stuck there, they don't have any cell phone service, there's no landline, so they're stuck. They can't go outside because the Wolfman's outside. And that's it. We kind of just watch him slowly, gradually turn into the Wolfman, and then he completes his transformation and then starts going after his family. That's the movie. And so it spends so much time not really doing a whole lot. And it just seems very kind of stripped down, very basic, very kind of formulaic, run by the numbers. It just seems like the most easy, obvious version of this type of story that they could have told. And honestly, once he starts losing his humanity and you see the transformation happening, and he's sitting there trying to talk to his daughter and to his wife, and the film does kind of a cool thing where it goes into this sort of like wolf vision mode where you see things from his perspective and everything just kind of looks different. And he can no longer really understand. He can't communicate with them anymore. So he can't really, understand what they're saying. They can't understand what he's saying. And so while that transformation is happening, the movie just gets sad. And that's not necessarily a negative because, again, I think the film does a pretty good job with the father-daughter dynamic, and you kind of feel the emotions of that. It does less so with the husband-wife thing. I didn't really connect too much with their relationship. But like I said, it just kind of gets sad and not really scary anymore. And so it kind of turns into this sort of somber, sad, dark, almost depressing like story. And part of me thought they were kind of going a little bit of a metaphorical route because, like I said, there's so much emphasis placed on, the father and son and father-daughter thing to where, he so badly did not want to turn into his father because he kind of saw his father a little bit like this monster. And then it's like no matter how hard he tries, no matter how hard he resists, he's ultimately going to turn into his father, this sort of, beastly creature. And so there is a little bit of that there, but I feel like I'm stretching it a little bit and trying to dig for a little more depth and subtext than what's actually there. And so, yeah, like I said, it kind of gets more sad than scary, and it's just kind of a very standard paint by the numbers type of story here. And so in the end, it's decent enough for a one-time watch. I didn't hate my time with this by any means, but it got to the end of it and I was kind of just like, yeah, okay, that was fine enough for a one-time watch. I think, too, based on how the film ends, and I don't want to get into any specifics, but I was kind of questioning, I was like, was the more kind of serious, dramatic approach really the right way to go? Because, I mean, it's about a guy who turns into a wolf. And so it's kind of silly and kind of ridiculous, and I almost wonder if the film as a whole would have done better just kind of playing into that and making this something more fun and less sad and serious. So, yeah, like I said, decent enough for a one-time watch, but not anything super memorable. So I think overall for me, I'm gonna go like 6 out of 10 here, I think, for Wolfman. I was a little bit disappointed in the end. But anyways, those are my thoughts. Hit me up down below. Let me know your thoughts on this one. Would love to hear from you guys. That's all I got. Thank you so much for watching. If you got anything out of this video, you know what to do. Do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard.